Hey everybody, Joe Killinger with theRRD. We've got a great guest coming in today, Bret Nielsen. He works with one of the largest developers here in Southern California that really has a focus on retail. And Bret is also an adjunct professor at USC. So he's going to give us a lot of information on retail, development, forecasting for retail, as well as debunking some of the myths that you have regarding retail, like Amazon is a big retail killer. So stay tuned, this is going to be interesting. And I'm really interested to get your take on retail. You know, everybody's saying now retail is dying, retail is dying. I just don't think there's anybody better to reach out to really kind of give our viewers an idea of what you feel is what you think is going to happen across the board on retail.
Yeah, interesting question. You know, it's changed so much in the last 20 years, which is relatively a short period in the business that I've been in. And when 20 years ago, the World Wide Web is coming into play, didn't know what the future was. Everyone's saying bricks and mortar is going to die, but you know, we've experienced that it hasn't died. I don't think it's going to die. Retailers are changing. You know, big boxes are consolidating. We're seeing a lot of consolidation of tenants that are actually, you know, we're over cannibalized. You know, tenants like the Gap, which are a great tenant, but you know, they'd open up on every retail corner, you know, throughout the cities, and all of a sudden they realize they're cannibalizing themselves. So let's have less stores, but A locations. So they're getting rid of the C locations, they're getting rid of the B locations, and they're focusing on the A locations because they figure if they've got great retail properties, you can't beat the location. And they're going into smaller footprints. They're not having these mega, you know, stores anymore. Like when we had, you know, 20 years ago, you had the 13 plexes, the 20 plexes, the 30 plexes. You know, the theaters, all of a sudden they started figuring out that let's do it smaller because you don't need to be in these big mammoth type of facilities. But it's also about experience. What we've experienced in our company that I'm with is, you know, it's about creating a great environment, creating a great place. People want to feel secure. They want to feel safe. You know, most people want to shop up. If they can shop in an environment that's nicer, where they're going to, you know, the same stores as another location, they want to go to a nicer location. You know, we talk about a property that, you know, we have like the Grove, which is known around the country, especially obviously here in Los Angeles. We're showing the same movies as the theater, you know, a couple miles away. The same M&Ms, the same Milk Duds. But what is it that's making them draw there? So, you know, over the competition, it's the experience and what we offer from an environment. So that's what I see. I also see, you know, like right now we're in this phase of, you know, fast casual is coming into play and health conscious and people thought, is it just Southern California? And it's not. It's all across the country. So you got so many concepts out there. You know, Tender Greens really paved the way. You got Sweet Greens paved the way. Then you got tenants like Mendocino Farms that they want to give a great product, quality. They want to obviously give an environment because they're beautifully well built out. But they also want quality for a great price. So you see a lot of the fast casual coming into play that they're growing, and they're growing a lot. But then you find those retailers that are, you know, they're more into, you know, design, and they want to make sure that the product is right and fits the experience of coming in and having that environment, and it's aligned with their brand. So they're spending a lot of money on design, a lot of money in building out their spaces, but they also have dual channels. You know, you've got dual channels where you've got the internet, you've got the bricks and mortar. You may have less stores, but they're going to make sure that those stores are actually special, they're unique, and there's something that people are going to come and have the environment to go and touch and feel and experience along with that product. So I think it's, you know, there's a tremendous opportunity for a lot of retailers out there. But I'll take a step back, and you look back when I was growing up, you had the Sears catalog, and around Christmas time we called it the wish book. It's like when that thing came out, you know, not that I could get everything, but I'm tabbing everything that I wanted. Where Sears had the catalog, they had the wish book, and they had their bricks and mortar store. So they had dual channels. Right. So, and that was 40 years ago.
Right.
Now you got dual channels still. You've got the bricks and mortar, and you got obviously the web, which is another dual channel. The catalog business, I think, is, you know, come and gone. Even though I still get them at home, I don't really look them at as much.
No, you stick with the online. What do you see? I mean, everything is experience now, is what you're saying. It's all about. Where do you think the weakest part of retail is right now?
Well, that's a great question. I think that's a great question. Big box, I feel, is going to get hurt. I feel apparel is soft, but the problem with apparel that we've seen is that it's what I learned a long time ago. You can have great, and there's a lot of great apparel companies out there, but they're so dependent on how styles are going. If they have one bad season and one bad, it's not a bind, because if you're vertically integrated, I don't pick on the Gap or the J. Crews, I use them as examples where you're vertically integrated, where you're actually designing, you're manufacturing, and obviously you're selling, so their margins are obviously greater. But let's just say the designs of that season are not in line with the consumer and they miss the mark. Well, that can throw off their earnings for the entire year just based on that alone, because I think fashion shifts so much.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we see retailers mostly when they come from Europe, and I'm not talking about the obviously domestic ones, they're hitting New York first. Then they're hitting the West Coast. That's typically how they go. Not always, but it's driven by fashion. So if they miss that mark, I think there's an issue. But I think smaller stores, less stores, again, goes back to the A locations, the right environment. And we feel very strong. We've seen in our own company, you know, our vacancies are still extremely low. We're 99, literally 0.9% occupied, very little. We're actually trying to get back space from tenants. If they're not productive, we approach them. We're not always looking for the warm body in the checkbook, because they actually gravitate towards, obviously, environment. But it's all about sales. If they're doing the sales, they obviously want to be in those environments. You know, sales drive rent, rent drive value, and they want to make sure that they're going to hit home runs on every single location. Doesn't mean they always are, but they're going to want to make sure they do, and they're going to want to be in an environment that's got a track record for success.
And do you think, you know, retail over the last year or so has really been, you've seen a lot of store closures. Do you think that's kind of at a lull now, or do you think we'll continue to see these closures?
I think you're going to continue to see them.
You do?
I really do. And I don't think we're going to have as many as we saw in 08 or 09, but you've seen a number of them already occur. And I look back, and I'm not an expert in, you know, looking at the stock market, reader financial statements, but the companies that have gone away, they were so, you know, they were the core company. It was then sold off to private equity, and then the private equity is then run, with all due respect to that sector, very smart people, but if they're not in the business of retail and they're not true what I'll call merchants, they're just looking at the numbers.
Right.
I think sometimes with some companies, not all, they get away from the focus.
Right.
And I think that has become the problem. It's a catch-22, because they want to raise capital and they want to grow, and in order to grow you need the capital. So it's just a matter of having the right people in the right positions to grow those companies that know the business.
Wow. What do you think, what are your ideas on how would you reposition big box? What would you put in there now, do you think? I mean, it just go a whole different route. Don't be looking at any more retail, maybe go in and find, like, I know there's several gyms that are looking at these locations that they can go in and put two-tier, they could have these courses, obstacle courses they can put in. Would you rather go that route or chop it up and put in other smaller retailers? Or,
you know, it's a great question, because there's a lot of these big boxes coming back, and, you know, let's take a step back from a development perspective.
okay.
Whenever you're actually designing a project and you're building a box for a specific tenant, we always have, I've learned this over the years, you got to look at the second generation.
Okay.
And it's easier said than done, because when you're signing a lease and there's 20 years of control or 30 years of control, you got to assume in the back of your mind that that tenant's going to go away. So nowadays we're more and more conscious of that, of how do you reposition, what's the next generation for that specific space. But I think it's a combination. I mean, I'm a big fan of multifamily right now. I only know, you know, I'm only focused on our market here in Southern California. I think that's a way to actually get in, to obviously do some repositioning, especially when you see the big boxes, the Macy's and the Mervyns that are now, you know, coming back. And I think there's going to be others that are going to be coming back to us. But the gym's a perfect example. We actually, you know, at our company, we recently took a 3-story, 145,000 square foot Nordstrom building. The first 2 levels are Dick's Sporting Goods, and the top floor is Gold's Gym.
Oh, wow.
And Gold's Gym are actually, whether it's Gold's Gym or 24-Hour Fitness or the others, they're looking at these opportunities because you got all this space. They can get in for a good price. Mm-hmm. It fills space, but not only does it fill space, it's obviously bringing constant traffic throughout the day.
Yeah. So this, you really see it as there could be opportunity for the right retailers or right tenants?
I believe so. And back to your question about, carving up space. Yeah, I think there's the opportunity. I mean, you see a number of these big boxes. I saw one recently where it was an old Sears building. Sears wanted to downsize its part of the space. One part of it they did a Nordstrom rack. The other part they did a DSW. The third they put in a Sports Authority. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but they didn't foresee that, which nobody really could at the time.
Right.
But it was a nice way that now you've got 3 separate tenants in there that are sized appropriately, that you've got a great mix.
Right.
And they're able to create
Drive
value.
traffic.
They're able to drive traffic, create value. And obviously I think there's going to be more of those coming online.
What, in retail, what we're seeing, and this is more Southern California specific, we're seeing some of the restaurants. What are your thoughts on restaurants and where they're going on the retail side? Or is that something you even really touch on?
No, I do, because I think, what we do as a company, and I believe it, with any project, is that drives so much, not only traffic, but it adds to the character, and it adds to, when you can have outdoor patio space, and you can see it spill over, and you can see the activity. And the food is just driving so many projects right now.
Yeah.
You can't, if we could get more, food in our projects, we put more food, because those are the tenants that are actually expanding a lot.
Right.
And there's phases too. Like, I'm not going to pick on the pokey industry, but all of a sudden pokey is hot one day and you see them on every corner.
Yeah.
Is that a fad? I don't know. Do I enjoy pokey? Yes. But when you see them on every corner,
It's too much.
there may be too much. But that fast casual, health conscious, that is a growth vehicle right now. The sit-down table restaurants in the right environment, obviously they're growing as well. That's the one sector of the business that we are seeing a lot of growth in.
All right, so one last thought process. What are your thoughts on the enclosed malls?
My personal feeling of the enclosed mall is, looking at statistics, statistically there has not been one new mall. When I say mall, I'm talking enclosed mall that has been built in the United States since 2005. So you ask yourself, is the consumer actually, are they gravitating to it? So, or are they not? And obviously they're not, because if the consumer actually was gravitating to it, they would actually be building more. I think it also comes down to retailers play into that, not only consumers. There are certain retailers that have been in malls that will not go into malls anymore. There's some are in both. But some nowadays just say, you know what, we don't want to go to an enclosed mall. We'd rather go either into an outdoor quote-unquote lifestyle center, or they're going to want to be on the street. And it's either more akin to their brand or their style, if they can choose not to be an enclosed mall. And you see a lot of them around the country that have actually shut down. There have been announcements that more and more are going to shut down.
Yeah.
Do I think they're ever going to go away? No, but I think what's also driving it too is the big boxes. The big box retailers are consolidating or going out of business. That's going to actually play into a redevelopment opportunity, which I view as a good opportunity if I were an owner of an enclosed mall or malls.
And put in some really strong retailers.
It's either retailers or, finding different uses that actually can, they can be more synergistic.
Right.
I mean, I'm a big fan of multifamily. Can you create an environment, whether it's, office, more creative office, and also multifamily into that retail environment, and have a great sense of place created with a combination of 2 or more of those components, and have a true mixed-use project? I think you can do it, but it depends on where you're at. If you're in suburbia USA where the mall is really the centerpiece and there's not another shopping destination for 30, 40 miles, probably not. But if it's in a more of a dense area where you can create the opportunity and you need housing and there's a lack of, and there's a demand for it, I think there's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I do too. Everybody is saying, Amazon is killing retail, and I've never really believed that, but and hearing it from you, now that I know I'm right. I'd like to go on record with that one, please. I know we're running out of time, so thank you very much. That was very informational. I learned a lot today, so if you like what you see today, please get down below and subscribe, and give us a follow, please. And if you have any questions for Bret, reach out to me, and we'll reach out to him, ask him some questions for you. Thank you.